Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson charmed audiences in 1992's White Man Can't Jump, an all-time great sports comedy, and 3 years later, Sony would try to recapture that magic by reuniting them for a big action comedy. It'd be given a bigger, beefier budget, but ultimately it would fail to reach the financial success of Snipes and Harrelson on the basketball court. However, despite the poor returns, I contend that this movie is actually a kick-ass action flick that delivers plenty of laughs as well. So let's get into the behind the scenes and on the screen action of 1995's Money Train. What's up, everybody? Thank you guys as always for stopping by the channel. I greatly appreciate it. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Anthony DeJoya, and this is Movies Never Say Die, your home for 80s and 90s retro content. If you enjoy this video, hit the like button and consider subscribing if you'd like to keep up with all my new videos once they are released. Now, today's movie is admittedly one of my guilty pleasure favorites. Now, I can see its flaws, but I do think that Harrelson and Snipes together can always entertain, and I do have a soft spot for this movie. Money Train dropped over Thanksgiving weekend. I was a teenager at the time. I had a date with a girl that I was really into. We were supposed to go have some food and watch this movie, and I can still remember the build-up for that day after Thanksgiving. I was super excited for this movie because I was a big Wesley Snipes fan, but I really dug this girl. I knew this would be my chance to charm her and let her know what Anthony was all about. It turns out she was just taking a break from the guy she was really dating, maybe using me to make him jealous, but once I advertised my charm, she got back together with him shortly after, so that didn't turn out as planned.
Matter of fact, she didn't even keep the rose you gave her.
That's fucked up.
On the bright side, though, I thought Money Train was really good. I had a blast with it, and to this day, it's on my New Year's watch list. I'll also link a retrospective review I did of White Man Can't Jump for you guys to check out if you're interested later on. But even that movie wouldn't be the first time that Snipes and Harrelson would be in a film together, because earlier in their careers, they both had roles in the Goldie Hawn football comedy Wildcats from 1986. But without a doubt, White Man Can't Jump would be that breakout for them as a duo, raking in a ton of cash and really garnering a lot of praise from both critics and audiences. So naturally, it was assumed they could repeat this success with Money Train, a bigger action movie set in New York with larger action set pieces and a blend of comedy that could really rely on the chemistry of Snipes and Harrelson, essentially turning them into a tweaked version of Riggs and Murtaugh. Now, originally this movie was being developed by Tony Scott, with Doug Richardson, known for penning films such as Bad Boys and Die Hard 2, writing the screenplay. However, after it took too long to get the project closer into production, things would stall. Scott and Richardson had moved on, and in came director Joseph Rubin, known for films like Sleeping with the Enemy and The Good Son. He would bring in David Lowery, who also wrote Passenger 57, to revise the script. But when you watch this movie, you can clearly see that Snipes and Harrelson did a ton of improving during their comedic scenes, because you just can't write some of the things these guys are saying to each other. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Money Train was given a hefty budget. It was $68 million. Snipes and Harrelson both got $5.5 million, and filming would take place from January to May of '95 throughout parts of New York and on sound stages in Los Angeles. This movie actually at the time had one of the longest sets ever built, at over 3,000 feet long, when 4 railway tracks wide for the filming of the action sequences involving the Money Train. Originally, it had been intended to film on location in the New York City subways, but this proved to be a logistical nightmare and really an impossibility. The massive Los Angeles set was extremely detailed, though. It would include stop stations, complete with platforms on the sides of the tracks and toll booths, just making it as realistic as possible. 12 subway cars were modified so they wouldn't need to be electrified and could instead run on propane. They were shipped across the country out to LA. The crew would film in the real New York City subway tunnels, then intercut the footage from the real soundstage to get the film a solid, seamless look while you're watching. Now, as for the casting of Money Train, it went relatively smooth. Woody and Wesley were always intended for the leads. Jennifer Lopez would be cast as the female lead, Grace Santiago. Both Cameron Diaz and Catherine Zeta-Jones would audition for the part, but it would ultimately go to Lopez, who was still very much on the rise at the time as an actress, having done mostly TV work up until this point, and Money Train would be her first big mainstream part. As for one of the film's villains, Robert Blake plays the sleazy racist Captain Patterson, who's in love with his money revenue train. This is a bit of an awkward and creepy part of this movie. Blake in real life was accused of murdering his wife. He was eventually acquitted, but regardless, it's a little strange seeing him in this movie. I guess overall he's fine in the role, but he certainly does overdo it. His character is one that you need to hate, and Blake's performance certainly makes that super easy. So for the needs of the film, I guess he does deliver.
Now that would make sense. A white brother, a black brother, and a Latino sister.
And closing out the cast would be Chris Cooper as the Torch, the film's secondary bad guy. And it was actually this character that brought the movie the most attention, just highly negative attention. As I said, Cooper's character is called the Torch, and he would essentially rob ticket booths by using a rubber tube tucked up his sleeve to squirt some gasoline or some flammable liquid into the booth. He'd then strike a match and demand the money, or else he would light it up. This is the primary villain of the film for a period of time that Wesley and Woody's John and Charlie are aware of while working the subway as decoy cops. Sadly though, because humans will always be human, it was reported that a handful of similar crimes to this actually took place in New York during the film's release. 2 days after the film dropped into theaters, two men poured gasoline over a ticket booth in Brooklyn and lit the thing up. Now, police never specifically related these crimes to Money Train, but it was an easy common sense connection to make, so a boycott was called on the film by the New York City subway workers, something that was supported by then presidential candidate Bob Dole. Sony did stand by their film, but promotions were dialed back, all the posters were removed from the subways across the city, and I certainly think these events did have an impact on the film's financial returns. Because as I said, it was a $68 million budget. It dropped on Thanksgiving weekend of '95. It pulled in $10.6 million its opening weekend, landing itself in the number 4 spot. It would pull in another $6 million its second weekend and earn in a total of $35.3 million in the States, with another $41.9 internationally, to bring the total for Money Train to a respectable $77.2 million overall.
That's money.
That's a whole lot of money. Stop drooling. Stop drooling.
So it was a profitable film, just a very small profit, and much less than the $90.7 million that White Man Can't Jump grossed at the box office. Not great, but certainly not the bomb that it was labeled as by the USA Today when it was released. And to no surprise, the reviews for this film were lackluster, but I still think it's a solid movie from the mid-90s. Wesley and Woody may not be as magical together as they were in White Man Can't Jump, but they're still very good here, and they're more than able to fill this movie with some crowd-pleasing charm and a lot of energy. Money Train does have its noticeable flaws, yet I think it delivers more than enough to be a capable action thriller with a solid, lighthearted atmosphere. I think Money Train has a great plot. Wesley and Woody play foster brothers who work as transit cops in New York. Lopez's Grace Santiago has been newly assigned to the team. Wesley's John is a smooth, righteous man who has his life together. Woody's Charlie is a drinker with a massive gambling problem. They basically patrol the subways. All the while, there's this guy torching ticket booths. Eventually, Charlie's gambling problems escalate to the point where he decides to steal the Money Train patrolled by the ruthless Captain Patterson. So overall, I think Money Train has just the right number of moving pieces to it. It does have a quick pace as it works through its story layers. It bounces evenly between action sequences and comedic set pieces for Woody and Wesley. The development of the love dynamic between Lopez and Snipes and the continued descent of Woody's bad luck resulting in him hitting rock bottom are both given time to explore as well. It's nothing special by any means, but the atmosphere is energetic, it's charmed by an upbeat score. New York is a great setting for the story, and the consistent blend of action and humor does make the movie effective. The action overall is well staged. Snipes gets a couple of his trademark fight sequences in, one later in the film against a club owner that's still very satisfying to watch today. The rest of the action is a lot of well-shot chase sequences on foot throughout the city and in the subway, as well as a satisfying buffet of harrowing intensity as the film closes out, as the money train is racing out of control through the tunnels with Woody and Wesley hanging off the sides of the thing. It's all very Speed-esque, but still climactic enough to get the adrenaline pumping. So as an action film, Money Train certainly checks many of the boxes that you want, and as I said earlier, it is plenty humorous, but the problem is it's rarely, if ever, hilarious. Many of the blatant attempts at humor feel a little bit forced. A lot of them land a little flat. This results in the shift of tone from action movie to comedy being a bit too large, as well as, like I said earlier, Robert Blake, who I think is able to create a dislikable character, but he just puts way too much sauce on this performance, and he's cartoonish to the point he feels like a bad comic book villain. However, with that said, I still enjoy this film. I like Woody and Wesley in these roles. They aren't naturally as humorous as they are in White Man Can't Jump, but you have to admit the writing isn't as strong for them here either. Money Train in the end is a good film, but with this budget, it needed to be a great one, and this pasting together of ideas just didn't result in that adrenaline-pumping action flick or buddy comedy that it should have. However, I still have a great time every time I watch it. It does put a smile on my face, and I think it still holds up as a crowd-pleasing action romp from the 90s, so I'm going to give Money Train a solid B-. And that concludes my look back at Money Train from 1995, guys. Don't forget to check out my White Man Can't Jump video if you're interested. I'll have it pinned here in the comments for you guys. If you have seen Money Train, let me know what you guys thought of it down in the comments. Also, if you're a Wesley Snipes fan, I have a whole playlist of Wesley Snipes videos you guys can check out if you're interested. I'll leave that pinned as well. Thank you guys as always for watching. I greatly appreciate you. I'll see you all in my next video, and until then, movies never say die.
This is Jack Burton in the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Flag of war. You gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?